The problem is you can't leave these Palestinian Christians where they are. They can't go to Egypt, they can't go to the US, Canada, or Europe, so you can't just leave them there. And I can't reveal my sources lest they be put in even greater danger, but I trust them. And I'm telling you, they're telling me that they don't believe that Christians in Gaza should be moved to the south or they'll be slaughtered. And I'm not ashamed to say publicly what many of the Christians in Gaza cannot say. Good evening and welcome to a very special Thanksgiving edition of the Rosenberg Report. I have to say, I really wish that my wife, Lynn, and I could be in the U.S. right now, celebrating Thanksgiving with our family and friends. It is, after all, one of my favorite holidays. But Israel's our home, and our country remains locked in a hellish, brutal war against satanic enemies who've sworn to kill us all and wipe us off the face of the earth. So we're here, working around the clock with our wonderful colleagues here at TBN and All Israel News and All Arab News to provide you honest, credible, trustworthy reporting on all that's happening, and also working with our wonderful colleagues at the Joshua Fund to provide humanitarian relief to those suffering through this horrific war. Despite everything, there is much to be thankful for, beginning with this. A deal has been struck to release 50 Israeli women and children hostages. It's a controversial deal. Not everyone in Israel is happy about the details, but still, Christians have been praying for the Lord to move heaven and earth to get these hostages out, and it's beginning to happen. Please go to All Israel News for the latest details. Please keep praying for all the hostages to be released soon, but most of all, please join me in thanking the Lord for hearing our prayers and starting to bring Israelis back home to their families. I'll share more of what I'm thankful for later in the show. But first, our lead story. Palestinian Christians in the Gaza Strip are in grave danger, and they need us to stand with them and intercede on their behalf at this critical hour. There are only about 1,000 Christians left in Gaza today. When Hamas came to power in Gaza in 2007, there were many, many more Christians there, but most have fled over the past 16 years, and for good reason. Those who remain are currently sheltering in 3 historic church buildings in and around Gaza City, which is in the north of the Gaza Strip. But they're running low on supplies. They're being told they need to leave those churches and move south with the rest of the Palestinian population. They're scared. They're feeling very much alone, and they desperately need our prayers and our help. On November 17th, I wrote this column for All Israel News. Very urgent. Israeli leaders, please evacuate Palestinian Christians out of Gaza and into the West Bank immediately. These Christians face genocide by Hamas if they're forced to move south. 2 days later, I wrote this, crisis update. Gaza's 1,000 Christians need urgent prayers, aid, and a safe haven lest they face genocide from Hamas. Israeli officials have a special responsibility to make sure these Christians are safe and cared for. My goal was threefold. First, I needed to alert Israeli authorities of just how urgent this crisis really is, and that sending Christians to the south of Gaza is a bad idea. It's too dangerous. There's no safe haven for them in the south, and it could lead to Hamas raping Christian wives and daughters, and then Hamas murdering all of the Christians in Gaza, just as ISIS slaughtered Christians in Iraq and Syria. My recommendation has been for the IDF to evacuate these Christians out of Gaza and move them to the West Bank immediately, where Palestinian Christians who already live in the West Bank can welcome them in, provide them places to live, and where various Christian NGOs, including the Joshua Fund and others, can come alongside them with food, clothing, and other humanitarian relief as needed. Second, I needed to alert Christians around the world and mobilize them to prayer. This is a very dangerous, complex, and fluid situation. So we really need to be praying earnestly and without ceasing for the Lord to supernaturally intervene. And third, I want to see the Lord move in power to answer our prayers and truly rescue these dear brothers and sisters of ours. Now, the good news is that the first 2 objectives have already been completed in the last few days. By God's grace, I've had the opportunity to brief senior Israeli officials on the situation. And I can report that the plight of these Palestinian Christians is, in fact, being discussed at the highest levels of the Israeli government. Now, I'm not at liberty to say more than that just now, but But I want to assure you that Israeli civilian and military officials are, in fact, trying to figure out how best to handle the crisis and relieve the suffering of these Christians. At the same time, I can report that our articles on All Israel News have lit up prayer networks of Christians and Messianic Jews all across Israel, the U.S., and around the world. Followers of Jesus Christ are praying fervently for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and I ask you to join us and pray for them as well. What I can't say right now is exactly how the situation is going to play out. I'm painfully aware that since the dawn of the church in the first century, the Lord has allowed his children to be martyred. And even in recent years, we've seen radical Islamist jihadists slaughter Christians all across this region, just as they've slaughtered Jews. But I, for one, refuse to let my brothers and sisters face genocide by Hamas without doing everything in my power to save them. And I must tell you, as dark as things are, I remain hopeful that the Lord Jesus Christ is going to do a miracle. And even though it's Thanksgiving week and some of our team is on vacation, my team and I are continuing to publish updates on All Israel News and All Arab News. So please keep a close eye on both as we bring you updates on this fast-moving situation. That said, I also need to report that there have been some sharp criticisms of my reporting by various people who argue that my reporting is inaccurate and alarmist, that Palestinian Christians in Gaza have no fear of going south and living among their Muslim neighbors there. Now, that's just wrong. But others are arguing, as they attack me, that Christians in Gaza do, in fact, have great fear of being raped and killed by Hamas, but they don't want to be moved to the West Bank. That's true. Some don't want to be moved to the West Bank. Others are saying these Christians in Gaza want to be allowed to exit Gaza and go to Egypt or the U.S., Canada, or somewhere in Europe. That is true. The problem is that Egypt, the U.S., Canada, and Europe right now aren't allowing any of these Christians or anybody from Gaza to come into their countries. Still others are saying that Christians want to stay in Gaza, come what may. And there may be some who feel that way. Fine. But there are others who are warning that any help provided by the IDF, by Israel, to the Palestinian Christians would brand them as traitors and put them in even more danger. That is a risk. But that said, I stand 100% by my reporting. The problem is you can't leave these Palestinian Christians where they are. They can't go to Egypt. They can't go to the U.S., Canada, or Europe. So you can't just leave them there. And I can't reveal my sources lest they be put in even greater danger, but I trust them. And I'm telling you, they're telling me that they don't believe that Christians in Gaza should be moved to the south or they'll be slaughtered. And I'm not ashamed to say publicly what many of the Christians in Gaza cannot say. After all, this is exactly what the Bible commands us to do. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly and defend the rights of the poor and needy. Look, I may not agree with my Christian brothers and sisters on every political or theological issue, and you may not either. And the Palestinian Christians themselves may not agree on everything. But look, they are in mortal danger. They have no way to speak for themselves right now. So let us be their voice. Let us intercede before earthly kings and before the King of Kings on their behalf, because it's the right thing to do, and God is watching.